Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of our operating and capital budget for 2024. I will go ahead. We took a recess yesterday at the end, so we will jump back into it now. The recess is done. I have a question for Mr. Kraus. So we kind of left off yesterday with not sure what we wanted to do with one more thing that had to do with the operating budget, just with that extra leftover, the 23 or 24,000. Would administration prefer that we get that done and dealt with before we jump into capital?
So Deputy Mayor, it's up to council. I mean, at the end of the agenda is council discussion, so you can talk about it then after we're through the capital. That
Okay.
suits
Okay.
council.
That sounds good. Okay. So we will jump right into capital then. And we have Ms. Quinlan here.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor and Council. We're going to have Mike present or just do the overview for capital and then go into the capital projects.
Perfect.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor and councillors. I will present the capital and the 2024 capital projects, the 10-year capital funding summary, and the 10-year capital project summary. So if you go to page 450, you'll see the 2024 capital projects and the different divisions and the different capital projects for 2024. There's a total of 6,600,000 capital projects slated for 2024, and they're funded through town reserves, country cost share, grants, debt, and other. The country cost share accounts for $1 million of funding, and that's through the airport and rec. So if we go through some of the larger capital items that are slated for 2024, the terminal building for $1.4 million, and is funded half through town reserves and half through country cost share. Okay, right. And airfield lighting is another one, $622,000, which is funded through provincial and MSI grants. And we also, of note, is that we apply the funding from our grants and provincial grants to some of our largest projects, which are the terminal building, airfield lighting, and you'll notice in utilities, 44A Street is $1 million upgrade as well. And we'll go through one by one all of these capital projects in the next section. So on page...
Sorry, just a moment.
Sorry,
Councillor Phillips.
before we start, I just wanted to check, before we roll into the new LGFF system, is our MSI money going to be used up prior to that?
Yes,
Okay.
it'll be used up. They also have carry forward rules, and we meet the criteria for that. So if there is anything left over, we can complete it. They haven't announced the amounts yet for LGFF, so I think everybody's just assuming they're going to be the same amounts for next year.
So we'll start in the administration division. So the first project is the new administration building, which we had a feasibility study done in 2022 and noticed a lot of non-compliance with health and safety standards. Design funds were not expended in 2023 as expected in the 2023 budget, and so it's been carried forward to 2024. So $50,000 for the design of the new administration building is slated for 2024, and then there's a total spend of $8 million on the new administration building slated to start in 2025, which is funded $4 million through debenture and $4 million through capital reserves.
So Deputy Mayor, just a clarification on that. So the funds for 2024 are actually for us to do a study to see what other user groups would go into a civic building. That was council's direction at the service level. So the 50,000 isn't for design. It's more to do that study and consult with different nonprofit groups within the community to see if there's any partnerships there.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Hutchinson.
Did we put any time limit or anything on that? I can't remember if we had said we wanted something by, say, mid-year, just because if we keep extending, as we've noticed, inflation hits.
Yeah, so the timeline on that would be in 2024, is to make sure it's done prior to council service level review next October. And then council can determine the next step forward from there.
Sorry, one more comment. The total capital funds that are budgeted for actual construction, right now they are a placeholder just so that we've got it in the 10-year plan. So that's not set in stone, and it might be pushed out depending on where council goes with it. So don't think that it's just set so that we can make sure the financing is all appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next project, which is the records management system, which is Laserfiche, which is to essentially move to a more electronic records management system as opposed to a paper filing system that we currently have in place. And it'll streamline our invoicing and payables management. And there's $100,000 of expenditure slated for 2024. The Life Cycle Building Assessment Project, which will be undertaking a review of all the municipality buildings to develop a long-term replacement plan, is for $100,000 in 2024. So, just of note, it's for all of the municipality buildings within the municipality, and to see what potentially needs to be replaced in the future. And then moving on to protective services, we have the RCMP body worn cameras, $3,000 per camera to be put on each police officer.
Sorry, Mike, just a moment. Go ahead, Councillor Shipple.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. On that, this is the first I've seen this. So I'm not sure, is it a provincial rollout program, or I'm just wondering, because there's a discussion of the possibility of provincial police, which may or may not ever happen. Is this an investment we're making that may be something that's not where it should be and down the road? I'm just concerned about the timeline on this project and where it came from, who initiated it.
So Deputy Mayor, I can answer that. So through our municipal policing service agreement with the RCMP, we are responsible for certain capital investments into the RCMP. And actually, you will see their 3-year financial plan at the policing committee on Monday. So they list several upcoming capital investments into the RCMP that we are responsible to do. So the body-worn cameras are something they think will roll out in 2024, and under the agreement, we're responsible for that cost for each RCMP officer. And if you go through the 3-year plan, you'll see upcoming is new guns for the RCMP. So we'd be responsible to replace the firearms for our 14 officers under that agreement. And ballistic shields is another one, and so forth. So this is an obligation under our agreement.
You okay? Okay. Thank you.
So moving on to the next project, and this is for the fire department, and it's miscellaneous items such as pressure washers, pumps, PVV replacements, which a total budget of $30,000, with the county contributing $23,000 and the town contributing $6,900. And this was discussed at the ICC committee meeting. And then moving on to the next page, we have a fire pickup truck, also presented at the ICC meeting. Total budget is $110,000. Town and county sharing 50-50 of the cost, so $55,000 is the town's portion. And then we have a structure protection trailer contents, also for the fire department. The town's portion is $27,600. And the next project is roadside screening, so law enforcement sobriety test breathalyzer machine and supplies for $5,000. 5,000 in 2021 and 5,000 in 2024. We'll move on to Parks and Rec, and we'll have Sean present.
Thank you. Good morning, Deputy Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
All right, so for the Parks Department, we're looking at purchasing 2 trailers to replacing one of our aging tip trucks. The trailers offer more flexibility, they're a better value, they'll last longer, and they're needed to do our jobs, so excited about that one. We also have a number of pickup trucks that are aging out and they're becoming maintenance intensive to repair. We didn't purchase heavily in the last few years with COVID and those restrictions, and so now we're still having to deal with those things. So again, those pickup trucks will help us a fair bit. Which brings us to the 2009 International 5-ton dump truck that we're looking to replace. This dump truck is becoming sort of a maintenance issue for us. We're having,
Sorry, Sean. Councillor Schipul?
all good.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Deshaun, about the, I want to go back a couple pages to the
You go
dump
right
trucks,
ahead.
okay? So we got a couple of tilt trailers. When I look at the pictures, there's similarities in those 2 pieces of equipment. I'm wondering if there's one piece of equipment which would work for both purposes, versus having to buy 2 pieces of equipment. I just throw that out there. I go like, you're not gonna be using them at the same
Absolutely.
time.
So again, to the benefit of the sort of the tilt deck trailer is the carrying capacity of it for what we're able to load up on it. Right now, we drive a lot of our equipment around town and whatnot. The tip deck would give us the more flexibility to have a dump trailer that had that weight capacity and ramps with it. Would cost significantly more than that other style of trailer, and also we get 2 trailers, so we can be doing 2 different activities at the same time, right? Because they have different uses. We don't, haul material and whatnot with the tilt deck. They do 2 different functions, so it gives us a lot more flexibility, and it's more cost effective for what we're gonna get. Help answer the question, I hope? Because, yeah, you can get a dump trailer, but they don't have the carrying capacity to load something like a skid steer or something on it without costing a whole lot more. And then also the vehicles needed to tow those larger trailers are also larger. So again, the smaller trailer we can tow with a smaller vehicle as well when we're going around town, which again increases our flexibility for the price point.
Yes and no, would be my reply back to that. I see dump trailers hauling bobcats around town. So I go like, is there ever gonna be the time when you'd use them both at the same time? Maybe, maybe not. So is it a need or a want? And so, I go on saying, if we need them both, then yes. If we want them both, then I say no. So I just question that as to where that's at.
I'd say it falls very much into the need. The other thing that this is also addressing is these existing, we have 2 trailers existing, and they're almost 35, 40 years old. Like they predate anybody who works in our department in Rutland. So they also increase the uses for those. We haul equipment, we haul our cages, and we use our trailers a fair bit. And so again, having these trailers is also important for those things. They're not just a single-use item, we only use it in this application. The engineering department, we have to do lots of varying tasks, and trailers are just a lot more effective than a pickup truck with a tip deck, which is these are replacing and whatnot. So we're just trying to make the best decisions we can with those. So it's not just these that they offer us flexibility, it's also a lot of infrastructure and how it ties into our existing operations that they also benefit us, as well as, those aging trailers, we have to do a lot of maintenance work on those. And again, trailers last a whole lot longer than pickup trucks do, as indicated by the other ones. So I really do think they're a good investment, and I do think they are in need, and they're a capability that we do need to have, because right now we're sort of working around our limitations.
You okay? Oh, just a moment. Go ahead, Rob.
Something from back here? You want me up there? There's no room.
Good morning.
Good morning.
When we started looking at these two trailers, the theory behind buying the two trailers was we've got a aging tipper truck that's a 2015 or 205. Sorry, it's 2005. This truck needs to go. Our plans are to replace it with two trailers, not replace the truck. The truck today is about $85,000. We're looking at spending half. Right? And it's going to get us a whole lot more versatility than what that tipper truck does. The tipper truck is a 1-ton cab with a tipper box on it. So that's the idea behind the two trailers versus the truck. And yes, we do need both units, because they will be used at the same time. Right now, for the one trailer, and looking at the two pictures that is in the book, these are pretty elaborate. That's not what we're going with. We're, like, there's different styles, whatnot. Price range is is that $20,000 is what we're looking at.
It's okay. Okay.
Went over the pickup replacements, which brings us to the dump truck. Again, this is an older dump truck. It's causing us maintenance issues. It's becoming quite costly to maintain. We're also having issues getting parts and whatnot for it in a timely manner. And again, when we need our dump trucks when it snows, we need them then, so we can't really have that. So that's a replacement for the 5-ton dump truck. We are also looking at replacing the John Deere loader with a similar unit. It's important to note for this John Deere loader that the intent is to transfer that or sell that to the airport. As far as accounting goes for them, as that one is also aging out and becoming very maintenance intensive and expensive to repair. And again, with these pieces of equipment, they are critical for us. When we need them, we need them. We're also fairly rough on our equipment during snow clearing activities. It's one of the hardest activity maintenance-wise you can do with your equipment. Next, we have the small equipment, which is mainly focused around the rear steers. Again, we've had the existing ones since 2016. They're driven a lot during the summer, so and these ones, again, they're becoming more costly to repair and maintain. They're having to be sent off and repaired a lot, so they do need to be replaced. Same for the one on the home page, the Land Pride, also needs to be replaced as well. The arena truck is, again, aging out, and they're, again,
Sorry,
starting.
Sean, just a
go
moment.
ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Hutchinson.
So what do we do with any of the aging equipment and whatnot? Are they worth anything if it's not going to another
We do
department?
attempt to sell them through auction or transfer them to other departments who might be able to use them. Unfortunately, with these, the used market is limited, so we're not expecting a huge sale value on it, like some of the other pieces of equipment where we actually get some money back. The sale value of these is especially used, and again, we've used them well, so the value is limited, but again, we do try and sell every piece of equipment and recover whatever we can.
Thanks.
Brings us to the arena truck. It's same as the other ones. I believe this was scheduled for a few years ago, but again, due to COVID and whatnot, it wasn't replaced. And again, these older trucks are starting to cause us, maintenance-wise, they're starting to cost us more than their sort of replacement value. Brings us to the snow dump and the earthwork required to bring our snow dump, call it the giant car wash, even though that's just because that's what it's adjacent to. We need to do some earthwork there to sort of make it all drain to the pond, make sure the pond is sized correctly and whatnot in order to meet environmental regulations, so we can get them formally registered through Alberta Environment, which they currently are not. So it's all part of that. Which brings us to our paving program for 2024 is the intersection outside of the tire shop there. This intersection is sort of taking a beating. It's sort of where the road ramps down. And so right now we're spending a lot of time maintaining it, whatnot. It's also on the face of Rocky, right on one of our service roads where, the high traffic, it's one of our higher end commercial areas and whatnot. So getting this road sort of fixed up, and it sort of matches the other fixes we've done in the area and whatnot. Up next, we have the terminal building for the airport. I won't go on that one too much because that's been discussed with the county on and off, but that's for the new building and the replacement thereof. And that is cost shared with the county. The airport is also looking for a mower. Again, their mower is the same state as ours. They're used on a very regular basis for a very large area. And so we're looking for a zero turn for out there. The line painting is, again, a biannual requirement for the airport in order to maintain the, I don't even know what the status of it is. The same goes for the airfield lighting. Now, this one is grant dependent. Again, we're going to apply for the STIP grants and for funding on these and any other funding opportunities that are available. But again, the lighting out there is aging, and airport lighting is very specific on how it needs to be done, exact lumens, and, you know, it's a very highly controlled environment, very different from household lighting, and I got an unfortunate crash course on all of that fairly recently when asking about it. The plow for the airport is also aging out, and the width of it doesn't quite match some of the other equipment, so he's gonna be looking for a new plow, and again, keeping the airport clear as whatnot is also part of the requirements of running out there. Again, another education I got was airport asphalt and how different it is from roads, but for an engineering assessment out there for both the runway and especially the taxiways, there is multiple failing taxiways out there, trying to be cost effective in the repairs that we do and when we do them, because again, we're sort of looking at, you know, a very multi-phased approach, doing small pieces every year as opposed to a large bite item. But we need to make sure we do the right ones, and we need to make sure we protect the existing infrastructure out there. There's some cracks developing in areas and other things that we need to make sure we're on top of and get those things dealt with. Again, there's some bush clearing in the northeast corner for the airport. Again, needs to be clear of all obstacles. This is in consultation with the NARNAV approach and maintenance contractor. And then we have the 57th Street Close project. We replaced the water, sewer, and storm, correcting an existing storm line that ran through private property, updating an existing road, and improving the services throughout. Project was under budget and is mostly completed now. We're waiting for second asphalt lift, the landscaping, and the correction of some minor deficiencies and whatnot, which is sort of typical for those. So this is just a carry forward item for those items in order to complete that project.
Thank you, Sean. Go ahead, Councillor Schiffel.
Thank you, Deputy
Phillips.
Mayor. Question about, so if there's lines going through people's lots right now, do we have to remove those lines? I see they are pink on this map. Does that mean we have to actually go into residential lots and remove the line, or we just leave it as is? And
There's no formal requirement to remove them. The line is not protected though, so for normally if it's on our property or through a utility right of way, we do maintain the right so to avoid encumbrances such as buildings over our lines and whatnot if we needed to maintain that. We don't have that in this place. In fact, was a garage over it, but as far as there's no obligation to remove it, but we do have an obligation, I think, as residents and stewards to make sure there's no damage. So that line was filled with Fill Creek in order to ensure there was no settlement, or there's no other knock-on impacts of that, and that line is left buried in place and abandoned in place. So again, we make sure that there's no follow-on consequences, but sort of what it is. There's not very many other places where we have a situation like this that exists.
there's not many other places like that.
I don't want to say there's not any because I don't know of any, and there's some like across like the front meter or two of somebody's yard or the back two. So I don't want to say there's none or zero, or there's zero possibility.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Perfect. That brings us to the Sobey Lane, 44A Street, 51 50th Avenue. In the pictures, you'll notice a nice picture there that I believe it was minus 35 or minus 40 before the wind chill when that one broke last year. So that was not fun. So this is an aging water line that has caused us issues in the past. It's underlain. It's not uncommon for it to break. We expect more breaks there in the future without this project. The follow-on benefit of doing that is we also gain the opportunity to upgrade that existing lane that is sort of used as a shortcut route and sort of formalize that into an actual road. It should be noted that the right-of-way there is not going to match our collector standard. We don't quite have the width there. But again, there's sufficient width for 2 more than adequate driving lanes through there, and we're gonna pave it and formalize that as an actual through road. And that way, that improves the traffic flow through the area, gives more options for residents and whatnot.
Go ahead, Councillor Phillips.
Just a question on this project. Will it just be a road, or will there actually be a sidewalk there too?
There's not a plan for a sidewalk as currently there is plans for the curb, and ideally there will be space left for a sidewalk. There's a number of space constraints there that limit our space, including a number of electrical poles on the west side of the lane and whatnot. So taking more space for a sidewalk really intrudes into the road. In the future, I would like to leave as much space as possible for a walk, especially depending how things go, but I don't want to promise you a sidewalk.
Thank you.
There's the water treatment plant membranes. This is, I believe, the final filter rack that'll be going in there for all the other filter racks that are going in there, bringing our full replacement to completion, which is really, really nice to see. There's a required clarifier discharge environmental impact study. As part of the water treatment plant's operations, they do circulate the water back into the North Saskatchewan River, and this is a required report for Alberta Environment. Something that we have to do again. At Highway 11 and 752, we've had a lot of breaks over the past few years. They're also quite costly due to the infrastructure that is in place there. It's a highway. It's also difficult to coordinate the repairs there, and the impact to residents is higher. There's also a lot of concrete on the north work. The valving there is limited, meaning every time one of these happens, we affect the apartment buildings next door, which also impacts a lot of residents. So again, we'd like to replace that section of line. We're looking at multiple ways of doing it. We're hoping a directional bore or reaming it out and replacing a new line. So we'll look at those various options and installing a couple new valves in order to better the valving there. But again, we'd rather not be out in the middle of the highway at night. So again, whenever we have these, it's normally following a lot of repairs, and we expect a lot more. In fact, when we were digging this most recent one, while we were down there, we found more holes. And so we had to put on a couple extra clamps while we were down there. So we fully expect to have more water breaks on that line in the near future.
Yeah. Councillor Hutchinson.
So can you kind of give us an idea of so each time, the last time it happened in this location, what's the cost associated with us having to go in to fix it?
So the costs vary fairly substantially depending on what has to be ripped up. They can vary anywhere between $30,000 all the way up to $50,000, depending if there's concrete involved and whatnot. The other thing though is we have to shut off water to the area. We put residents on boil water advisories and whatnot. And that's why, we don't replace everything after a single break, because fortunately or unfortunately, the engineering department is pretty efficient at doing repairs. But when a line reaches this one, the repairs are gonna get more frequent, and if we start seeing 10 or 20 a year, you're gonna, you'll do the capital project, or it'll show up in operating in one. So sort of when it crosses that line, that it'll become more cost effective to repair is sort of when we put it in the budget.
And that was kind of my thoughts. I mean, you've got 100,000 for 2024 and then 700 for 2025. If we have 4 or 5 incidents this winter, you said you're getting to the point where.
That's exactly it.
So is there any thoughts, doing that repair sooner than, the entire repair sooner than later?
Ideally, we would like to be able to do that sooner. There's concerns with this one because there's other infrastructure, and there's clamps on it, which limits our repair options as well, because pipe bursting is difficult when you have repair clamps on a pipe, unfortunately. So I would like to do it next year, but I don't know if that's as feasible. Again, if council wants to do that, I am definitely not going to argue against that. But
Trends
again,
with this line is typically every 2 years is what we're looking at for a break. That's what it was this last go around. and both times there was work done in the area. So with 57th Street close being done, they messed with the valves in the area, not the valves that affected the water line, but adjacent to that, which ended up causing blowouts with the pipes because corrosion, right? So each time there has been work before in the area, which actually caused these breaks.
So I should be clear, we're not expecting 10 breaks in 2024. We're expecting maybe 1 or 2 for the next couple years, so doing it in 2025 still makes sense. What we're worried about is sort of the rate of breaks is almost exponential, and so we're still not, it's gonna start getting ridiculous to do. But again, if we start seeing 3 or 4 breaks, this will obviously go up in priority, and we'll have to come back before you, and you'll get to say, I told you so. So,
It definitely is a lot cheaper to repair it than it is to replace the line. That being said, it's the severity of the location. If it wasn't under a highway, I wouldn't be overly concerned with it, but because of the location, it's nasty. You have to have, different regulations from the highways that we have to meet, and it's not ideal.
So how long, when this project takes place in 2025, how long does it take? So, because it is a well-used
Yep.
area.
It
there,
wouldn't
so-
be shut down.
Oh, okay.
Especially if they can do a bore or a reline or a pipe burst. It's a matter of digging up either ends and pulling a line through. So the highway won't be shut down. It'll
Okay.
be similar to what we just did with our break. The, lanes would be, down to probably a 1 lane, with the occasional closures, but it wouldn't be a consistent closure.
Okay.
yeah, and we'd have to work around that and do it in part 1, phase 2, and whatnot. So it's definitely possible, and that the price sort of reflects a lot of that for contingencies of dealing with all of those unknowns. Ideally, it'll come in a lot less expensive, but again, we're pessimists, so the budget reflects that.
Thank you.
That brings us to our infiltration program. Again, we do have an infiltration of stormwater entering our sanitary system. It's taxing our pumps, and again, when we're starting to pay to treat all of this effluent, it becomes a very critical concern. One of the go-to solutions is relining it. I want to be clear that although this project may not be relining, we have a lot of inflow from the surface and other solutions we're looking at. Again, we did, in 2022, we did a fairly large replacement of some manholes under this program in order to address those. This year was fairly light for rain, actually, so we didn't get to sort of quality check the whatnot. So we're looking to sort of continue monitoring the inflow situation and make improvements where we can, and to sort of address that and make sure that our system functions well and can support future growth. Cemetery concrete runs, again, those need to be done, so there's sufficient space for those in the coming years. And the same for the columbariums. This is sort of the completion of the things, so the west-facing wall is full to the bottom row, where the east-facing and the bottom row are not as desirable for other people. And that brings us to the arena. If there's any questions on any of the engineering and operations or airport capital budget items?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
So I've got a few recreation-related projects. No big-ticket items this year, but we're looking at doing some life cycle replacements. So the first one is replacing some puckboard on the Arena 1. We started this project last year just as part of our operating budgets, and this year it's a matter of moving on and completing that puckboard. What we're doing is replacing a thinner puckboard, and then there's Lexan on top of that that covers the advertising signage. What we're finding is the thinner product, because it's so thin, is breaking more frequently. So we're looking at changing out to something a little thicker. The old puckboard that comes off, we've been utilizing on the outdoor rink, so we're making use of that product. So it'll be an in-house project. The concrete lift at the rec center and at the pool, we're finding certain areas in and around the building. Since 2016, there's been significant drop in the concrete. And the water's flowing in the wrong direction, so we're looking at a lift to remedy that situation, hopefully alleviate some of the areas. The one in particular around the pool, we're actually starting to see water coming through the basement floor and into the bottom. So by improving the drainage, that will hopefully alleviate that issue without digging up the entire foundation and going from there. So, painting the exterior north and west side of the rec center. Of course, in 2016, they addressed all the new on the east side of the building. We're noticing, some paint chips and minor cracking. So we're looking at having that repaired and repainted. Onto the pool, the flooring in the lobby area. I'm starting to see several areas where cracks are developing, and it's getting harder and harder to keep that floor. It's original to the building from '77 or whenever they did the addition on there. So we're looking at replacing that with a vinyl product. The pool sound system, again, some of this equipment is very old. The heat or the humidity issues is certain electronics doesn't bode well. So we're looking at replacing that system. And I should say that all of our recreation projects, we're looking at a 50-50 cost share with the county. The CO2 feeder system. As part of our filter replacement project this year, one of the things that the contractor identified as a future way of improving our water quality is adding a CO2 feeder, a system where you inject CO2 into the water, helps control pH and alkalinity of the pools. It's just a more efficient and safer way. That way our staff aren't manually adding sodium bicarb and other chemicals. So just sort of and other technologies that come about that's will allow for a little safer way to treat our water. Now this parking lot and trails, I think I'm going to turn that back over to Rob in the Parks Department, I think, or Sean. They're going to speak to the pump track parking lot or other trail amenities.
Hello again. So this line item is for the pump track parking lot, in order to help facilitate that project going forward. And part of the commitment from the town is sort of to help pave that parking lot and improve sort of the adjacent area around that in order to help that project go forward. So that's, again, fairly simple. If there's any questions on that, or we also have the trail plans based on the master plan and the increasing of the garbage and recycling amenities along the trails, including garbages and benches, upgrading some of those benches have been failing and whatnot. So this is
Sorry,
replacement.
Sean, just a moment. Councillor Hutchinson?
So the money going in for the pump track, for the parking lot, that's a separate than what we.
It is, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted clarity on that one.
Thank you.
I'll turn it back over to Wes for the North Saskatchewan River Park. Yes, the next project is the North Saskatchewan River Park upgrade, sort of phase 3. We talked original plan way back before they were
started on the grandstand and stuff, one of the things was bringing electricity and stuff into the park. This last year, we did upgrades to the rental hall, bringing that up to code, and we purchased some furniture for the suites. 2024, I'm proposing just $10,000 to do the netting, the bird netting, and then we would hold off potentially on the electricity till 2025. So we actually were able to, within this year's project, we've purchased the netting. We just need money for the installation of that, so a minor amount. That again would be cost shared with the county. Pardon? And then the next project is the pump track, and I know we've had many discussions about the Pump Track Society request for funding to match their CFAP grant, $250,000, and then 2025 saw a contingency of 100,000 in that budget.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Is there any updates on where their CFIP grant's at, or anything?
I talked with Mr. Anderson 2 weeks ago, and they knew it was under review because, again, they needed to provide proof of the funding they'd done. They have secured their naming rights with the credit union and the co-op, so that's assisted with that. But my understanding, it's still under government review. I said, I don't know if they'll get an announcement before the new year. So we're looking at historically when they've announced, thinking back to the football lighting one, it was a January announcement. So.
Councillor Phillips.
Just a quick question, Wes, for the 2025 placeholder of $100,000, what would that be for?
I'm trying to think back to the report that they brought to council. I think it was, Dean, can you help me out on that?
So that was a request that the Pump Track Society brought to council, was $250 for 2024 and $100 in 2025. I think that's more of a contingency pending on approval of the CFAP grant, the amount of the CFAP grant, and sponsorship. So right now, I think it's just a contingency. I don't think it's actually part of the initial project.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, and I think I remember them saying something about that could not be included in the CFIP grant, so that's why they had asked us for the 350, but only 250 for the grant application and 100 later on in case they need it.
I believe that with the funds that they have in place, plus the sponsorship now that they've secured, the matching component has been met for their project. So it's just a matter of waiting on the CFAP confirmation. I'm pretty sure we'll hear more once that is announced, one way or another.
Right.
And I think that's it for me. As far as the rest is, again, parks and trails.
As part of the Trail Master Plan and improving pedestrian and trail accessibility, there's the trail along Highway 11 from 66th Avenue to 71st Avenue, and it sort of completes that long loop that's fairly well used by our residents. And we're adding a nice loop. I don't know if had any 5K runners in there. It gives a nice option for doing a loop for those sort of things. And so again, we're pretty excited about that one. It's been a long-standing item on the Trail Master Plan that needs to be addressed. The next item is the Mad Bench replacement. The Mad Bench has been exhibiting a number of cracks and whatnot, and the Mad organization is looking for council to help us fund the replacement of that bench.
Councillor Hutchinson.
So are they looking at the same material that the existing one is?
Okay, so it's just some history behind this. So this bench was donated to the town through MAD, and so it became our property. A vehicle struck the bench, which caused that crack that you can see in the picture. The advocate for it has requested for us to replace it. Our engineering operations department has inspected it. They don't think it's it's more of an aesthetic issue than it is a structural issue of the bench. But the advocate for the bench has really requested from administration to replace the bench. We've advised that person that, okay, it's a $10,000 bench. We didn't have it in our 2023 budget. The best we could do is bring it forward to council to see if council wants to spend the $10,000 to replace the bench. So that's the history behind this project.
Okay. Councillor Ald?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Would that not have been covered under the insurance of whoever hit the bench?
Good question, Councillor Ald. Unfortunately, when it was donated to us, it wasn't added to our insurance. So we did not have insurance at the time of the vehicles striking it. It is now insured under us, but that's the dilemma we have.
Where's the location of this bench? I am trying to think of where I maybe have seen it, but I can't think of. Oh, at the tennis courts. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So, if
Oh,
we
sorry,
could,
Councillor Chabot.
sorry, Deputy Mayor, back to the original question, are we gonna replace it with the same material, or are we gonna look at something different that might be more?
The request from the advocate and MAD is to replace it the way it is with granite. I think it's granite, but I mean, I think the maker of the bench said they would try just to replace the cracked portion, but they don't know if they can do that the way it was constructed. So the 10,000 is for an entirely new bench. But we would try to see if they could just replace the back portion of it, which I think I think it was around 4,000. So that would be the first step if council approves the project. But if they can't do it, then it would be like a full replacement. I know they're also asking for relocation of it to make it in a safer location, more up towards the entrance of the rec center. Versus where it is now, because the location now is what we think happened, like a vehicle going into where the oval is and coming out and striking it, but we're not 100% sure.
Thank you.
And the next line is the landmark attraction. This was requested by council to be in the 2024 budget. Then for the wayfinding signage program,
Sorry, Sean, just a moment. Councillor Hutchinson.
Can you just go over this landmark attraction? What did we ask?
Council has asked administration, council has put in their strategic plan to have a landmark statue or monument. So this would be exploring this with council in 2024 to see what council is truly visioning here and to proceed with that.
Okay, I was thrown off because
The
of the
picture-
picture.
yeah,
And I
these-
thought, what were we doing with this? What were we adding? But
No.
yeah, I think that was probably a suggestion that came from me anyway, so thank you for clearing that up. Yes, I think so.
there we go. All right, so and then the next item is the wayfinding signage program. The map board of the Town of Rock Mountain House, so tourists can find their way around town in an efficient manner. The existing ones there's not very many and they're outdated.
Councillor Hutchinson.
They're not just outdated. So the problem I had with them is, again, if you're standing this way, every map is the exact same.
Yeah.
And to see them turned, so that their north is always gonna be north, and when you're standing at the corner by my house there, you have no idea which way you're supposed to be going, so that was that was a little extra that I wanted, that would be a good touch.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm not doing the wayfinding signs. It'll be consulted out, because again, north is always up in my world, but, so, again, so that will be part of that. It'll be consulted out, and someone more intelligent than me will have something nice and pretty, and that'll be location specific and whatnot for that, right?
So just so council's aware, we've actually found a grant that we can apply to wayfinding signs. So we are applying for that. So hopefully, if we're successful, these costs will go down. So in 2024, it's really design of what you want the wayfinding signs to look like and location, and then 2025 would be the installation of them.
Thank you.
That brings us to the Lou Soppet. Again, oh, sure, if I can just do that one, then again, the Lou Soppet's just replacing the chairs in there. They're older chairs and needing replacement. The same for the microphone.
Sorry.
Go right ahead.
Sorry, Hutchinson.
What do we do with the old chairs? That's-
I'd have to defer to Wes, but I'm assuming he would try and sell them, and then if not, they would be recycled and disposed. Yeah, that's exactly what would happen.
Thank you.
And again, the same is true for the microphone system, again, for hosting other events and plays that needs an upgrade.
Thank you, Sean. And now we'll just go over the 10-year capital funding summary. So the schedule lists out a 10-year capital plan. So we just went over the 2024 column. So you can see that the total spend for 2024 is the $6.6 million. And then the next 10 years forecasted out till 2033. And so the top section are the revenue buckets, or the grants, county contributions, other contributions, debentures, and then the reserves required. That's the capital reserves of the town. So it's just how these capital projects are funded, essentially. And then the expenditures by division, and then you can see the impact on our reserves, on the town's reserves, as that money from the reserves required from the top bucket is taken out of our reserves. And you can see that we start off with $25 million of reserves in 2024, at the end of 2024, and at the end of 2033, we have $16 million of reserves. So it really just shows that we're being good stewards of the town and increasing our capital spend, increasing our capital assets, and at the same time having enough capital reserves for future generation.
Can I ask a question? Looking ahead, 2029, under, I think that is protective services, placeholder for 14.2 million. Is that maybe for a new RCMP
Yes,
station?
it's a placeholder. We've put it in because part of the goal of your 10-year plan is to identify all the potential projects. But yeah, that's for if that ever comes to be.
Okay, thank you.
And you can see right at the bottom, there's the bucket where we went over the operating expenses yesterday, where there's transfers to capital. So you can see $4.5 million coming from utilities and from general operations that flowed into the capital reserves. And if there's any more questions on that?
Councillor Hutchinson.
Why is there such an increase in the transfer to capital in 2025 compared to the rest?
It's actually the 7.8 million. That's
Yeah.
actually the transfer of what we need to spend in 2025. And that's based on the projects that we've got listed. So if you look under the expenditures for 2025, we bump up to 13 million. And that's because we've got the admin building budget in there. I don't think it's gonna happen in there. It'll probably get pushed out, but that's what's causing that increase.
Any other questions?
And for moving on to the 10-year capital project summaries, so the next 20 pages or so is essentially just a breakdown in detail of the next 10-year capital projects. So the previous page was the summary, and this is just the detail. If you want to find like the RCMP detachment and all that fun stuff. So I won't spend too much time on that. I'll let you guys review that if you so choose.
Counselor Phillips and then Counselor Shippo.
Yes, Betty, just looking at the LGFF MSI grant, it kind of fluctuates up and down over the years, and I'm just wondering why there's a fluctuation.
This graph shows the funding that we're assigning to projects. It's not the amount of grants. So we bring the grants in, we put them in deferred revenue, and then we assign them. So it's just the rate of expenditure.
And Counselor Shippo?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Line number 3223, and that's paving in the industrial area. And in 2026, it has paving in there for 400,000. And last year in our budget, there was a new product or slurry or something that I had never heard of in my life. It was going to go in the industrial area. So that did not happen this year. So is the intent to not do that fix for a short period of time and actually look at now asphalting down the road? Is that the new? Okay.
Any other questions? Oh,
What
sorry,
did
go
happen
ahead.
to the slurry idea?
Mr. Shanks can correct me, but actually I don't think a contractor was, we couldn't get a contractor to do it. So we abandoned the project and said, okay, well, we can't find a contractor, then we need to take the step of paving. And just pull that closer up.
Any other questions? Okay. So I think now, Mr. Kraus, is the point in time if we want to discuss any of the,
Deputy Mayor, I think Ms. Quinlan just going to run you through our debt and reserves.
Okay.
And then we,
So the last couple pages, really they're just for reference. It's showing what our projection is for the 2024 reserves on page 530. So it shows, you know, what our closing balances are, what we're expecting for additions and our expenditures. And then it's just showing you the balance of each of the individual reserves. And these sheets tie into that 10-year funding summary that we've got. And you'll notice that the reserves up on the very top, we only have the 5 now. So instead of having a whole bunch that we basically end up having to move money between, it's really one large reserve, the infrastructure reserve, and that captures most of the expenditures.
go ahead, Counselor Shippo.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A question about 54th Street extension and the long-term debt on that. And
Sorry,
so that's
Counselor
on
Shippo, what page is that?
Okay,
page 532.
so the
Yeah.
next sheet, yeah, you're
So-
ahead of us.
Pardon me?
You're ahead of, okay, go ahead.
You're going to answer this question down the road. I just want to know, the number's large, and I want to know if there's money coming from the developer for this number, if this is the real number that is our debt, or if we actually have funds coming in from the developer that will reduce that amount of money. And if there is funds coming in, where is that in this document?
Okay, that line is it's a line of credit that's part of the agreement. That will be paid off completely by, is it September 2025? In 2025. So that's carrying charges for the developer's share of the project. And the agreement is after 4 years or by 2025, they will pay that in its entirety to us.
So is that the amount of money owed by the developer to us then, that's on that line?
It's really close. That's the maximum that they were, that we could go up to, which was, the cost plus interest. Right now, we're done the project, I think it was like $1.98 million. And then now it's just, we're charging interest through to that, but it goes to a maximum of 2.07. So we're carrying those charges, well, we're holding it, we're not, it's not costing us anything, cause they're gonna repay it.
So it's long-term debt owed to us by a third party,
Right.
and we're collecting interest on it, and it's due in 2025.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, we've got it set up as, there's a receivable set up on the balance sheet that
Okay.
they owe us, and it's also set up as long-term debt. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then,
Yep.
like, these other ones, they're included here. I don't know if they need to be, because technically they're not part of what I would consider our long-term debt, but we've just included them in for your information.
Go ahead, Councillor Phillips.
Just to further, for Councillor Shipple, the developer's portion was triggered either to pay by 2025 or upon development on that road, either or. So, but 2025 will probably hit first before the development does.
thank you. Before my time.
Yeah. So just in overall, there's the next 2 pages after the reserve is our long-term debt section.
Sorry, Betty, just a moment. Councillor Shipple has another
Oh.
question.
I'm sorry, I want to talk about the new wastewater treatment plant and the debt that we have on that,
Right.
and how it's put into this form. I can't see a big number, I see a bunch of little numbers, I'm just not sure what the long-term debt is going to be, and when it's gonna become a long-term debt to us, in terms of the total amount.
Okay, so on page 352, about halfway down, it does say proposed, and we probably should have updated that because we do have a debenture. It's $4.8 million is what the debenture is. And it says long-term debt, province of Alberta, and right under 54th Street Extension, it says wastewater treatment facility. Is he on the right page? Okay, and under original, it says 4.8 million. And then the end of 2024, we actually have received those debenture funds. And at the end of 2024, the balance on that will be 4.599689. So that debenture's already in place.
So to that, if that debenture's in place already, prior to the project being done, are we paying interest on money that we aren't really using, or how is that working? Is the debenture gonna be just given in increments as required by the town? Or is the full amount already?
It's been received, so we're earning interest on it. It's sitting there, so we're gonna be using it towards some of the funding, or towards the expenditures.
Just a question, why would we have it all in place prior to the project?
Actually,
Why
it
would
is a
we-
requirement of the MGA that if you're gonna do a project, you're supposed to have the debentures in place before you start the project.
Okay, fair enough. Good to know.
And so Deputy Mayor, just to, remind council, so we actually applied for another grant for that project. I think it was $2 million? 2 million, so if we're successful in that grant, it'll bring that project cost down for us, so.
That'd be great. Councillor Phillips.
Sorry, if we're successful on that grant, would it go against the debenture, or would that just go into reserves?
I'd have to look at all the funding sources. If we were successful, I would probably reduce the amount that we're transferring from reserves for it. They don't, I'd have to recheck it, but they don't usually let you make bulk one-time payments on debentures anymore. They stopped doing that quite a few years ago. I'm not sure if they've changed it since, but yeah, typically you wouldn't put it against the debenture. So this sheet, really, it's just showing you the debentures that we've got in place and any proposed debentures. I guess the key thing to see is that the arena upgrade, the monies that we borrowed to do the Rocky Regional Recreation Center, those payments will be complete at the end of 2024. So that's great. And then there's a small debenture for roads. You'll see on 2025 that line's blank, and the medical building. So we have a little bit of payments left. Like at the end of 2024, there'll be very small residual amounts left owing, but some of our debentures are wrapping up, which is good because we're looking at doing some more debenturing. So this is just to give you a idea of, you know, what long-term debt we've got. And that is the budget.
Thank you. So do we have any questions at this time? No? Should we go ahead and maybe take like a 10-minute break? thank you. Welcome back. So we are back from our break. So now we've gone through the budget, so if there's any discussion that anyone has, anything anyone would like to speak to. I know, again, yesterday we were kind of talking about that surplus from operating, what we wanted to do with that, so maybe this would be a good time to figure that all out. Counselor Phillips?
I know we kind of discussed it yesterday, but I'm kind of leaning towards, we have a new water treatment plant coming online that we're not 100% sure what kind of operational costs that may or may not incur. So I think it'd be prudent just to leave that there as just because we don't know what that wastewater treatment plant's gonna create 100% yet.
Counselor Ald?
I agree with Councillor Phillips. I thought about it more last night about the other option of dispersing it amongst all of the tax base, and I just, for the amount that it would add up to, it wouldn't make any difference. And with that water treatment plant is a huge deal we got going on, so I would be in favor of leaving it and just keeping it for, just in case.
Okay, thank you. I was actually leaning towards that as well, just thinking it wasn't gonna make a huge difference when it came to the taxes, as much as we would like to, lower that as much as we can and be better for the residents and business owners, but there is gonna be unexpected costs and stuff coming up, I'm sure, so I kinda thought that it would be better to be left as well. So I think if council is okay with that, we'll just leave those extra funds, gets transferred to reserves. Okay. Counselor Schiffel?
I have a couple items. Number one was yesterday we had a discussion about the non-residential improved on the taxation where we're going to small business with an increase to 4.97, and I'm not sure if we came to a conclusion on whether we're happy with that or not happy with that, or just going to leave it where it is. So I just want to make sure that we are okay with that. And so,
Counselor Phillips?
My thought on this is once we have our assessment done, which will happen here in early in the new year, and then we come back to this topic and we discuss it again. I think once we see the assessment and what that's going to do with the current mill rates, then we can look at what we do and don't want to do with the ongoing mill rates and how we want to address that problem.
That makes sense to me. Counselor Schiffel?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay. Was there anything else? Counselor Alt?
Just a bit of a comment. In the capital budget, there's numerous expenses that are coming up, but the majority of them are all items that were needed prior to this. But with COVID and our past decisions on council to not spend the money, to keep the tax rate the same, try and create some relief for our residents, I think now it's catching up to us a little bit. We have a lot of expenses that we have to incur, but we did the best we could originally and made those decisions, but now we have some infrastructure that we have to look after and replace, and that's where these increases are coming from.
Counselor Schiffel?
I agree with that. I got one item that I'd like to bring forward, and that was the discussion we had with Wild Rose School Division about value added at a new school build. And we haven't had that, it's not in our budget anywhere where we've looked at a possibility, or we haven't even had discussion, so I guess we can't expect administration to put it in a budget when we have, as a council, haven't determined if in fact what we're gonna do, and there was a discussion about a value-added component to a new school build. I guess my question is, at what point do we have that discussion and where does it get included? It's likely not in the 2024 budget, I don't think, but they are looking for direction to school division, so when do we address that?
Mr. Kraus?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So right now with the school division, they'll be approaching us when they start that study. And I guess the council can have conversations prior to them approaching us if that's something council desires. We can add that to a governance and priority committee meeting if council so desires. We have to be cautious when we go down this path because it's just not a one-time capital investment. if we partner with the school on something joint such as a library. Because when you do that, there's the ongoing operating costs that you're now responsible for too. And I will give you an example. So Clearwater County partnered with the David Thompson High School. They made a larger gym so it had seating. That was a request that was above the design. The original design, the province only provides parking for the staff of the school. So if they wanted parking for the high school students, that was up and above beyond what the province put in. So Clearwater County put funds in for an increased parking lot. So now what they face today is they have to pay a percentage of the heating, maintenance of the gym on a continuous basis for the operating cost. And they have to do that the same with the parking lot, the snow removal and stuff like that. So while there's benefits of parking, there's no doubt to explore. Council has to be cautious that this is just not a one-time expenditure.
Councillor Ault.
In our binder here, we do have the life cycle building assessment project that's going on this year, which is review of all municipal buildings to develop a long-term replacement plan along with potential costs. I would rather see waiting until this was done so that we're not jumping the gun. And if we wanted to, from the town, partner with the school, and whether it's a library or some other municipal function, I don't want to invest a bunch of money into that when we still have a life cycle of another 10 years on whatever building. So I would like to see this done before we committed to anything on that end.
No, I agree with that. Do we have any other items anyone wants to discuss or any questions? Councillor Ault.
The only other thing I want to get maybe a little more clarity on, with the RCMP and our costs that we have to incur, whether it's the body camera or what we were talking about yesterday in the negotiating with them, would these cameras and that, like the invoice that you sent us, what we have to pay for, is any of that negotiable, or is that all federal, or is that provincial? It's federal. It is federal, okay.
Anything else? Councillor Schiffel.
Speaking of RCMP, Stephanie, when she was here, indicated that they had talked about maybe more members. We are 12 right now, and my understanding prior to my time reduced by 2. Has there been any conversation with her and or the RCMP about increasing their number of members, or is that sort of a mute subject right now?
So that's all in their 3-year financial plan that's going to the policing committee on Monday. I could forward that to council, so all of council can review it. But they are not asking for additional members. Pardon me? Yeah. Oh, okay. But in there, I can quickly look. So what they have requested of council or the policing committee for additional, they're looking for an additional municipal clerk in 2025, 2026. But they are not looking for any additional RCMP members in this plan.
Councillor Phillips, and then I'll go to Councillor Ault.
And my thoughts on this are until our officer per population gets more in line with what it should be from a municipal point of view, that any additional officers that are future requested by the RCMP should put on the provincial side and fall under the PPSA as opposed to our MPSA. That would be my suggestion. It falls under the provincial side, not the municipal side.
Councillor Ault.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I was basically gonna say the same thing as Counselor Phillips. But also, I'm curious why another clerk is being requested when the amount of members hasn't increased. If we're on a ratio of, we have five clerks there now, and I think it's one clerk per 2 members. Why would they be needing another clerk?
So Deputy Mayor, I can't answer that because it's their request, but that is a good question for the policing committee to ask the staff sergeant on Monday. So council, just to remind council, so council created a policing committee, and through that, what council has done is delegated the management of our municipal policing service agreement to that policing committee versus council. So that's the questions for the policing committee to ask on behalf of council, and then for that committee to report back up, so.
In past conversations, when I was on the police committee, in prior years, to answer that question is, sometimes it's cheaper to have some of the administrative duties done by an administrative clerk as opposed to paying an RCMP member to do it. Sometimes it makes more sense financially to do it that way. I can't say what this ask, if that's what this ask is for, but in the past, that is one of the answers I'd received.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Well, I just want to thank all our directors, our admin, everyone for all the work that you've done on the budget this year. It is a tough budget. Unfortunately with inflation, there's costs that are going to be increasing, but I think we've done the best that we can. And we had a really good, day and couple hours, good discussion and stuff. So thank you all so much for the work that you've put into it. I think I can speak for council when I say we greatly appreciate it. So I think we can go ahead then and adjourn the meeting. So I'll adjourn the meeting at 10:30. Thank you.